Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Profluent Sports. We have been crushing the emerging sports leagues and IP properties of late, and have an awesome one today with Connor from the International Dance League. So, Connor, appreciate you coming on, and excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this.
So, give us the high level. You have a unique background into this. Tell us a little bit who you are and what the IDL is. That's what we'll be referring to here as, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first, like, what is the IDL? What is the International Dance League? You can think of it like F1 meets America's Best Dance Crew, right? So it's an open style group choreography competition. It's a competition tour series where the six best teams in the world operate as city-based franchises, right? So they compete at each event, scoring points until the end of the season, where there's a final and then a champion. Why am I building this? So my background is, look, I spent my whole life as a dancer, right? Like when I was 13 years old, I was at this party. I saw my friends do a windmill and I was like, that's it, man. I'm doing that for the rest of my life. So I have a background in like competitive dance. I competed with some of the best teams in the world. And over the last decade, I've actually dedicated my life to building my first company, which is STEEZY. It's the leading platform for dance education. So it's a subscription app, provides online dance classes from the world's best instructors. So we have millions of users in over 100 countries around the world. So I've been building that for the last 10 years. And obviously being a dancer my whole life, as a competitive dancer, like dance was my sport, right? And a lot of people don't know that 26 million people dance annually, which is actually the same number of people who play basketball, right? It's actually pretty crazy. You spend 30 hours a week in the studio, training, sweating, competing, all of that. But there's nowhere for you to go, right? Like I did that, and then I came to that crossroads. It's like, hey man, do you want to dance for Justin Bieber, or do you want to, And I was like, look, man, I'm a competitive dancer. I don't know if being in the background was really for me, and so that's what this is about. It's about creating that opportunity for all these amazing dancers that literally participate, train just like every other athlete, and provide them somewhere to go, because dance is a massive viewership thing, right? Like it's all over TikTok. Every network has a dance show, but there's just no pro league for people to grow into.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're seeing this across a lot of sports, seeing it in rodeo now. We've seen it, even in a lot of women's sports, and it seems like yours is co-ed, I'm assuming, Connor?
Correct.
Across
Yeah,
both.
it's co-ed. Yep.
Now, you built the distribution first with your app. Like, how do you see that tying in, right? Or was that what sort of uncovered the opportunity? Because, that's often the toughest thing for emerging. We're just going to refer to it as, I might say, leagues or properties, but just
Yeah.
for context for the listeners to understand, like, do you see that as your advantage to then go do this instead of just trying to shoot it up, by itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, distribution is the hardest part. And I think that's what actually changed, which is allowing a lot of these upstart leagues, as you're saying, or emerging leagues, be possible. Because like back in the day, right? Like if you didn't get a TV deal, then nobody would see whatever you're building. And the cost to create leagues is obviously not low. Like these are not cheap things that you can just kind of put together. So for us, like competitively, like, that is our advantage, right? Like we spent the last 10 years building the number one brand in dance. Like we generate hundreds of millions of views annually. Like our YouTube has like 1.7 and 1.8 million subscribers, right? So we understand content. We understand how to build content engines. We understand how to do storytelling. And when you pair that with dance and the influencers in the dance space, right? So like our teams are the six best teams in the world. And when I say that, it's because like one of our teams has 26 million YouTube subscribers. Like this is not just like a ragtag group of people that like nobody knows about. It's like they've been on 14 different TV shows. They have insane fan bases. They have their own tours. And so putting that all together, right? The distribution influence that I've already kind of developed and built over the last decade, as well as putting together these teams that have like insane fandom into this new league. But essentially it's things that people already love and want more of.
Yeah, when you look at, I think we're through the 2025 season, but next March 2026 starts, and you have about, an event a month, and it's global too. So I see Hong Kong, Middle East, LA, Vancouver, South Korea, right? Like you're hitting a bunch of different cities. Like, I guess give us the overview of the international space even, or just dance as a whole, of how that looks, the strategy behind, not just being a US based, property or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for like dance, right? And this is something that I realized more as I developed Steezy over the last 10 years, was that the global participation is just absolutely massive, right? Like when you think of like the US, you're like, oh, there's all these amazing shows, like So You Think You Can Dance, or America's Best Dance Crew, or what have you, or World of Dance on NBC. But internationally, you have like in Korea, you have like Street Woman Fighter. In China, there's like This Is Street Dance. There's just these massive properties outside of the US where dance is actually growing just as fast, if not even faster, right? And like, for example, I had just recently heard the stat that there are over like 3,000 dance teams across like the 1,500 universities in China. First of all, I didn't even know there's 1,500 universities in China. That's like absolutely insane, let alone how that many of them having dance crews. And so I think that there's just this massive opportunity, and dance is one of those things that does transcend like borders and languages, right? It's something that anybody can really watch and appreciate. And I think that's the unique value of what we have here, and especially with the teams that we've brought on. They all represent different region, right? Like South Korea versus Dubai, or Sydney. And so each one of these tour stops is essentially a home game for each one of our pro franchises, and so that's why it's set up that way. And so it travels through the rest of the world.
Yep. And how do you look at it from, I guess we'll go twofold. Like, have you viewed any other leagues or properties that have done a good job of, in an ancillary category of building something similar to this? You're modeling a little bit after you're thinking about, are you entirely doing this from scratch, or where are you pulling some inspiration from even as you go and build this out?
Yeah, so we look a lot at Formula One because Formula One as a model is a lot more similar to the way that we operate, right? Especially how dancers go to these different events, they compete, and et cetera. So that's a very similar model. Like we, as like the IDL, as the league, like we are our own operation, and then we have like the teams as separate franchises, and we're the ones that put together the entire tour. Right. So we're the ones fronting the capital and building out each one of these events. And we also have local operators operating some of these events. Right. So for Hong Kong, it's like we have a local operator helping us there. And in Sydney, it's going to be a local operator, et cetera. Right. So very much similar to like the F1 model. I think it helps distribute and then helps localization much, much faster and gets to scale quicker.
And do you look at this as similar to sports properties and selling media rights? Do you look at this as more, a different version of some of these emerging, sports of going direct to fans and creating your own channels? How do you look at the business model of this as a whole as you're growing this, or sort of plans or early traction? What does it look like today? Where are you trying to take it?
Yeah, yeah. So I think long term, obviously, like, we want to get media rights deals, and we want to expand this because we believe that this has the opportunity to be just as big as like any other sport out there. Like, just look at how I think F1 has done such an amazing job over the last, 5 years. Really expanding that influence. Like, we think we have the same capabilities of doing so, especially since we are in our own category, right? We're not like a derivative of another sport, et cetera. Like, this is its own category that we can really own and operate in. And in terms of like the way that we see that growing from like today to like, when we do get to that stage, it really is like just getting that level of mass distribution, which I think we've already done an amazing job with. So our first event just happened like about 30 days ago. So it was July 26th. We had our first event. We literally put together in 12 weeks. We had 30-day announcement on, so nobody knew the IDL existed until 30 days prior. And we literally, in the first 10 days, we got over 100 million views. Like, it just literally went viral. Sold out first event, over about 500,000 live stream views with 20,000 peak concurrent. It was just like a massive success and learning experience. So we know that we can translate that to like growth over time.
Yeah. And do you see I guess let's take a step back. I was going to go into the franchise model, and if you're thinking about teams and selling those off like some leagues do, but I wanted to go back one step. How have you set this up? Right, this is a question we get often from people that want to start their own little properties. Or did you raise venture? Did you set this up like an association model? Did you set this up more like a venture model that we're seeing emerging leagues do, like an Unrivaled that just raised, the women's basketball just raised a huge round? How did you set this up? What did funding, what did any of that look like at the start? And then how are you viewing it over time, as well as you hopefully, grow and scale this thing to where you want it to be?
Yeah. So we went down the venture path. This isn't like, each one of these events is like like millions of dollars, like to put this together. So it's not exactly easy from that front. Luckily for us, like we've already built another company, and kind of done the venture along the way. So I think we've had the experience in that front and been able to translate that this way, which has been good for us.
Got it. And going into the future, do you see the team's franchises as something you're looking at? Do you want to keep it all under the central umbrella? How are you viewing some of the, as you look at sports as an asset class, there's some of the areas of like the league, and then you have like individual teams and then the rights, and right, a lot of people are buying into these things, at different levels and different types of investors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing about this that we're really excited about is that, we do like have a franchise kind of model, right? So the six founding teams that we brought on, they're bringing their own fandom, right? They have their own studio operation, have, their teams, their talent, and everything that they're kind of operating. They're doing their own sponsorships already. So that's like the really great thing about why we chose these six teams is they have that legacy history as well as infrastructure. But we do plan on selling and expanding teams over time, right? So this is just the founding six just to get us started. But in the next couple of years, we'll be expanding to eight and then eventually into 12 over time. And we have some exposure to that as well. It's not fully separate model in the sense that I know, like, MLS in the beginning, they had ownership over all the teams. But since our teams are already existence, we actually just own a portion of each of these teams. So we're creating like a JV. So it's a little bit of a hybrid model starting out.
Got you. And I want to go back to, you had mentioned the journey, right? And you were like, hey, I don't want to be a backup dancer. And so,
Yeah.
then you're going and creating the education and building more on the tech side. And now you're coming full circle of, hey, let's create that pathway.
Yeah.
What is, as you're creating, let's just call it the end goal, like, or at least that's, your final destination is, hey, this is for the best dancers in the world. We want them to be, in the IDL. What's it look like before? Like, is there college infrastructure? Is there, is it purely just clubs or individual studios? What does it look like into youth? Is it just, like gymnastics and how that works? Like, what does it look like from a funnel or pathway to the IDL?
Yeah. So the really amazing thing about dance is all that infrastructure already exists. The issue with it is that it's highly, highly fragmented, right? Because there is no pro. So there's no reason to kind of like certify, sanction, rank any of this, right? And so a lot of these different kind of, amateur competitions, events at the youth level are just not set up to go anywhere, but they have the ability and are already being utilized. And so like from the extreme youth level, like kids, like I said, from ages of like 3 to 18 are in these dance studios in classes like 30 hours a week, right? They're training, and competition actually drives all of it. Competition dancers outspend recreational dancers 7 to 1. And they spend most of their time actually in these studios, right? They're on average, it's spending like $10,000 to $20,000 a year annually just to be in these competitions. Like some of these competitions cost $300 just to like get a slot to compete, and that's before you pay choreography, like rights, and then getting somebody to train you, all the private lessons around that. So it's a really, really expensive thing for kids to be part of these events. But the issue with them is, like we said, because there's no end goal, right? There's no like pro for you to go to. So everything you're doing across all of these events is not being tracked, right? And so you can spend your whole life, competing at these competitions, doing really well for yourself. Then you get a scholarship, right? And then you'll dance for OSU or LSU, and then you'll compete nationally for the university. So you'll go and compete at the ESPN Center, in Florida, and you'll get a national championship, but then there's just nothing for you to go thereafter. But the infrastructure is kind of there, right? There's like, it's called like D1A, like division competitions for colleges. Then at the youth level, there's lots of these different events that are rolled up into different tours across the United States. And so it's all there. There just doesn't have something to kind of pull it all together.
Got it. And does that look the same international versus like US? Is it all pretty similar in how it's set up, or is that more US specific?
That's US specific. Internationally, there's different versions of it, and they're just a little bit different depending on like, what the cities are. I think especially with like open style choreography competitions at the amateur level, there's a lot more, just like all around the world, right? There's like properties like World of Dance or Hip Hop International that have like 50 to 70 events kind of like all throughout the world that people are a part of.
And currently out there, I've seen maybe some other people, I don't want to say doing something similar, but some people trying to create some more dance formality.
Mhm.
From anything else out there, is it really just like backup dancers or like individual shows and competitions? Like, what are some of those, or what else is even out there currently to compete on a dancing level?
Yeah, so from the competition standpoint, there is one league in Japan that is similar. About a couple of years back, I want to say 3 years ago, they started this league in Japan called the D League, but it's hyper localized, right? So it's like Japanese talent, Japanese league, etc. They've done some really interesting things there, where corporations own each of these teams, and so they've actually set up a pretty interesting model, but it's just hyper localized. From the other side of it, there's competitions, particularly in like the freestyle space. So that's like solo, like one-on-one competitions And I would say across those two the kind of disciplines, like Red Bull has probably the largest influence on that space. So that they've been doing Red Bull BC1 for over a decade. And I think over the last 5 years, they've really built out the Red Bull Dance Your Style format, which is like a solo competition. They've done a really great job, and I think they've pushed the boundaries of it. But I think ultimately, I think that format is just not as good for the mainstream. I just think it's really long and winded. I think when you watch like events that have like qualifiers, that it's just a lot to watch, and I don't think the payoff is quite there yet. So from the competition, choreography, and group level, there's really nothing else out there like what we're doing, especially the format of which we put together.
Yeah, and what do you see from an audience lens? I mean, and we'll pull it up here in a second. Something we've been doing on more recent podcasts, if you're cool with this, is I'll just pull up like your YouTube, share the screen. You can walk through sort of how it works and then just show a little clip. But before we get to that, just want to give you a heads up. What does the audience typically look like? You can see you got a lot of views on videos. Are you drawing more from just that the viral nature of it? Or is there like a core group of like dance enthusiasts? What does that actual demographic fan typically look like?
Yeah, so demographics are usually between the ages of 18, 34, skewed a little bit more female, but not like a lot. So I would say like 55, 60% female. So it's pretty evenly split across the board there. And in terms of like the way that they're engaging with the content, there's like two types, right? So there's like the hardcore dance fans that follow like all of these different competitions, right? So they're watching the full videos across YouTube. And so the VODs essentially of like the competition, like choreography that people are putting out there. And then, of course, a lot of it is like viewed through just clips, right? And so we're talking like it's just like highlights in any other sport, right? And so that's obviously the main, I would say, distribution point for like the general fandom that's going viral across like TikTok and Instagram.
Got it. All right, I got a video pulled up, so let's share the screen here
It's gonna be fun.
and roll into. Yeah, I know these are my favorite sections. So, um, here you guys
Oh,
go
their
from.
trailer.
Yeah. So I think it goes through the rules. If you want to sort of just talk through it, if we won't put the volume on, just so keep it easier. But I'm assuming this is the 6 different teams you have.
And
Or maybe.
there's judges. So essentially there's for our launch event, there's 4 different judges. For regular season, there's gonna be 8. And there's an additional vote, which is the audience vote. And so the way it
Hmm.
works is that there's 10 categories that you're scored against. And in the first round, each team is actually paired up against one other team. So it's a heads up competition. So it actually normalizes a lot of the voting sequence. So you're not like, oh, what is this one dance versus like 5 others, which just gets like really complicated from that perspective. So it's really just 1 versus 1, right? So each team plays another team once, at least one time in that first round throughout the season, right? So it's a true kind of round robin fashion from that format. And the way it works is the judges score you on like, 10 different categories. So there's like execution, there's creativity, choreography, and it's stuff that like has been standardized for a very long time and has been used across all these other competitions. So you have that all here. And then what happens is based on the scores that the judges give you, the judge has one judge vote to award you, right? Of the 2 teams that win the highest in their categories for each judge, you get that 1 point. The tiebreaker is essentially like the audience vote, right? And so audience is also voting like who they think won based on the certain criteria. So, you could get like 6 to like 3, and then like that would be the audience kind of like breakdown on that side. So that's how round 1 works, and then the winners of round 1 move on to round 2. So half the field actually gets cut in that first round, and then finally in that second round, it's essentially like a 3-way battle. And so this time
Yep.
it's just the scoring out of 100, right? Because remember it's 10 categories, so there's essentially like a 100-point spread for each of these teams, and so then it's just first, second, and third point. The audience vote now is only a 1% kind of break. So the way it works is that let's say 30% of the audience votes for team A, right? So they get 0.3 of that 1%. Essentially, so they get 30% of that 1% that gets added to their score. So it's really small, kind of like audience participation. That's like fun, and it's a way to get people to participate, but it's not overly, adjusting of the scores.
Interesting. And for people not watching right now, they're just listening. This was the first place from this past year. It's pretty impressive. You can see this is Brotherhood. Where is this team based out of?
Vancouver, Canada.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's fun because they're like the underdog team, right? They don't have as many followers as like any of the other teams, but they're absolutely killer when it comes to like, just their abilities and their talent here. And it's interesting because like their winning performance now is actually a top 5 TikTok trend. So
Hmm.
the interesting thing about our sport, like compared to everybody else, is that like the winning moment is now like a trend, right? So everybody's doing it. You saw like, you know, the dancing weatherman's now doing it. Like, and it was just a Billboard article actually that just came out that the streams for that song, so it's an old song, it came out like 3 years ago, that they use
Yep.
is now five x the streams because they used it in this performance. So
Wow.
I think there's just much larger cultural impact when it comes to the way that these guys are influencing things.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, I mean, this video it's only a month old. It has over 400,000 views, 10,000 likes, uh, 210 comments, many with a lot of likes. So it's super cool to see from that lens how fast you're getting the traction on it. But yeah, I'd like to go through some of those with the league. So appreciate you walking through that with us. It's super cool just for people that can see it.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, I mean, what else? Like, what are you looking forward to into 26? Like, where are you guys focused on now that you've been through it a little bit?
Yeah, so our first event, you know, being massively successful, I think like that's kind of changed a lot of dynamic of how we're operating now. So we're moving a lot faster. So we've actually moved the season up. So now we're launching the season in March and we're doing the 6 events because originally we were thinking about like testing things out a little bit further, maybe just doing 3 events into the next year. But at this point, we're just moving like full force into a full season where everybody does play each other once in that first round. So we're putting together a new round of capital right now, which should be closing soon. Led by some amazing people. I can't really say anything yet, but you know they're deep in the sports world, very well respected, and we're really excited to have them on board. So that's the exciting piece there. So really building out the team and infrastructure. Just hired a chief business officer, helping with media rights and things like that. So it's going to be a pretty intense season. I think it's going to be
That's
fun.
awesome. That's awesome. And what do you see from dance as a whole? Any trends or just major things in that space that people aren't familiar? You know, of what's taking place there? Have things changed since you were coming up through it? What is just to give you a quick example, like from basketball, me coming up in it. The game has changed a lot. Just even people shooting way more 3-pointers and. Everyone wants to be a highlight tape and, NIL and transfer portal. I'm curious, like, what are some of those things in dance that are evolving as well and maybe benefiting, it seems like, to what you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think dance has changed drastically. I think especially with like social media and just with the influence of TikTok, right? I think now dancers have a lot more power than they did in the past. You know, usually the dancer is like the least paid person on like any job. I think even like recently they didn't even have a credit on IMDb. Like it was just like extra. You know what I mean? So there's just like I think a lot that has changed in these last like like 10 years specifically with social media, but also I think just like the globalization of like the world, right? So we're just way more connected, and I think all these different dance shows have really put dance as like something in the forefront, and people are now respecting that. And I think because of the fandom that these teams have built, this is the time for something like this to get really big.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's good. Good headwinds and just with the changing of entertainment. And I'd be curious to see, I'm sure, maybe not yet, maybe I'm sure you have a few conversations around it, but we're just seeing sports and entertainment smash at record rates where even a group we've done some stuff with, the Hundo Rodeo, have taken a country concert and a rodeo and smash them together. And I'm sure you're getting some traditional sporting events like maybe a basketball or football or soccer, whatever, that are like, hey, let's come bring dance into the center of it at halftime, or let's mix it with something else. But it's quite interesting time for all of our short attention spans and changing needs, especially the younger generations.
Yeah, I mean, we do some of that too, right? Like we essentially have a halftime show with like a major artist. So we had Dia, just like multi-platinum. She performed at our launch event. So we're definitely putting all those things together because dance does touch it's entertainment as much as it is sport, right? And I think that's the way it's been looked at for most of the world. And so putting it all together, it's definitely has really interesting ways that it can play out than your traditional sport.
Yep. Anything else, Connor? I mean, I think from our side, I think we've touched on pretty much everything, but just wanted to make sure in case there's anything else you want to call out. And if not, just let us know where people can learn more. What's the YouTube? What's website? Where can people start to take a look and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. No, nothing else. I think, yeah, if you guys want to learn more and just stay up to date with what they're doing, what we're doing, just go to www.idl.pro. It's where you can find all the latest information, news, as well as all of our social channels are linked out there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we'll link that and appreciate you coming on. Excited to see the progress. We'll have to have you on after you guys really start rolling and after 26 and watch the progress even further.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.